No. Got our intro.
Doom, 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 doom. What's going on, everybody? I'm Keith, host of Just Our Thoughts with the Fellas, where 4 to 5 of my brothers give their perspective on national as well as local news. We touch on some trending hot topics as well as culturally relevant news. We also get a chance to dive into some deep core conversations. Check us out live every other Monday at 7 p.m. You can find us on Just Our Thoughts on YouTube live, as well as Just Our Thoughts fan page on Facebook. Also, please don't forget to follow us on IG, JOT with the Fellas.
What's going on, man?
What's going on? In the words of our host, Keith Hall, welcome, welcome, welcome.
welcome. What's up, E? What's up, Ward?
What's going on, fellas?
Oh man, just trying to get ready, man. We have what, 4-5 days left?
Yeah.
Man? You know, we
do
get this thing started, get it popping, man. We got a special guest tonight, but before we bring him on and before we give that bio, let's talk a little bit, man. You know, we like to open up the show with a nice icebreaker, right? You know that.
Talk to us, E. Talk to us.
Yeah, what you got, brother? What you got?
So here we go. The topic for our icebreaker is re-gifting. Have you ever in your life re-gifted a gift that you received and gave it to somebody else? Now let's come on. Let's be
for
honest.
Christmas.
Yes,
for Christmas.
Yes, sir.
For Christmas.
Come on, talk to me. I know I have. Go ahead.
I don't know if I did it for. Hey, Kat, what's up, sis? Thanks for joining us tonight.
What's up, Kat?
I don't know if I did it for Christmas, but I have gotten some gifts for my birthday, and I guess throughout the year, just some gifts going in the past that I think, some of those gifts you're not going to be able to use. So I think what I've done is I re-gifted them. I never opened it, but some gifts you can look right and see what it is right through the package. So I'm sure I re-gifted. Is that appropriate though to re-gift a Christmas gift?
Well, let me say this real quick. Have I done it before? Yes, I have. Is it a common practice of mine? No, it's not. But to some of my fraternity brothers, they may have not known. But if I've gotten gifts where I was swamped with, let's just say, some colognes that I did not open.
Right.
I re-gifted them, spare the moment type thing.
Right, right.
We're last minute guys. Come on, Keith. We have been in the mall December 23rd. Come on.
Talk to me. E.
If I had to go to a let's say a Christmas party, man,
right.
Man, I didn't have time to run to the mall. I'm looking around like, okay, what can I give? So I re-gifted a few times some cologne to be
I got you.
honest. Not a common practice of mine, but have I
not
done
a common?
It
so everybody out there, when you get a gift from E, just question: is this gift gifted, or did he actually go out and put thought behind purchasing this gift?
Well, basically, it sounds like if you get cologne from EB,
it's re-gifted.
It's re-gifted. That was from his personal stock.
Right.
Listen, unopened. Now hold on. Now I know everybody reused a gift bag. Now come on, be honest about that one.
So we have a gift bags. Oh, for sure. The gift bags, they don't go in the trash. They're definitely given back out. Nice ones. Even when someone comes to the home and they bring a bottle of wine and a nice wine case. Wine bag. Oh yeah, definitely gonna hold on to that one.
Nice.
Wow. I don't believe I ever have.
Lord, I think you have. You just don't remember.
Nah, I don't think I ever have. It's like,
so you have every gift.
See, but here, you know what? But the thing is, like, I just have to go, like, during my marriage, it was like I really didn't get much gifts because it was like, well, I can't buy nothing for you because you got everything. Everything I want to get for you, already go get it. So it's like, I really didn't. And if I receive a gift, most of the time it's something that I really do use. So no, I don't think I ever re-gifted anything.
Okay. Yeah, so just pay attention to
To them
these
colognes,
bags and
yeah.
these re-gifts and the colognes coming from EB, from E-Dub.
And if it get, especially if it got some dust on it, you know it was regifted.
It's re-gifted.
It's regifted.
Crazy.
Oh man, welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Our Thoughts with the Fellas. I'm your host Keith Hall, and I definitely can't host this show and hold the show and be by myself. And I got the fellas with me on today. Here at Just Our Thoughts, we talk about national, we talk about local news, we talk about trending topics, we touch on culturally relevant topics, as well as have some guests, some dope, amazing guests. And tonight, we certainly have another amazing, dope guest that you guys are going to love, Dr. John Taylor. So while we talk, and if you can, share this podcast, tell your friends to join in. But I want to introduce the fellas today. We're missing one soldier tonight. He's down and out, my brother Kevin. But today we got E-Dub. What's good, E?
Oh man, what's good? What's good, everybody? Just getting ready, man. 5 days and counting, brother.
5 days and count. How's your shopping coming along, E? Last minute, I'm gonna see you in the mall Thursday.
Yeah, you know what? Right now I am 65% done. So
Okay.
I got a little bit more I got to do, man, to get in there. So I don't like the crowds anymore, but I got to get in there. I got to do what I got to do.
The boys done? Are you finished with the boys? You
The
still got
boys
some
are
stuff
done.
with the boys?
Yep, the boys are
Okay.
done. The boys are
Are
done.
they still, or do they believe in Santa, or do they believe in Dad?
You know what, man? They're starting to question it. They're starting to question it. Yeah, they're starting to question.
Okay.
So,
Boy,
Okay.
they better not be like me, boy. I stood down, I slept on the bottom of the steps, caught my mom and dad bread dragging and stuff in.
Yo, one time I came down the steps and I was young. I came down the steps because I wanted to peek and see if there was gifts under the tree and if Santa came. So I
Right.
came down the steps, man, it was nothing under the tree. And I'm sitting there looking and I'm like, I was hurt. I said, yo, I wasn't really that bad this year. Like he
didn't
didn't
think
have
you
to skip
was.
this house. I didn't think but you know me, I wasn't a bad
Right.
kid. So man, I went upstairs, man. I was so upset and disappointed. And then later on, I came downstairs and maybe it was like 6 o'clock, and I got my older sister and we came downstairs. We would always come downstairs together, Trina. And then I never realized the reason I came down too early.
Right.
My mom and them hadn't put the gifts out yet.
Yeah,
Right.
we dealing with the black Santa. They come late.
Yeah, it's the black Santa. Oh man, Ward, man, what's going on, Ward?
Hey man, I'm just loving it.
Yeah.
Just chilling. I went walk the park this morning.
Hey, Ward, you consistent with that, man.
I'm trying to be, brother. I'm trying to be. And then I went to wrestling practice today. So
Okay,
Nice.
okay,
So you
Ward.
was hanging out with Coach Thane, legendary Coach Thane.
Yes,
Okay.
legendary Coach Thane.
Hey, Ward, man,
Yeah.
it made my heart smile, man, when you told us that on Saturday that you was walking, man. It made my heart
Yeah.
smile, brother.
Yeah, mine's too, Ward.
Hey man,
Yo.
it was just, but it's always good to see y'all. It's always good to hang out.
Yeah.
Talk about stuff.
Oh man, dope. So appreciate it, man. Tonight we got Dr. John Taylor on, and we're gonna bring Dr. Taylor on, but I do want to read Dr. Taylor's lengthy, lovable, wonderful, amazing bio. Dr. John Taylor, PhD, MED, MACC, LPC, is an author, assistant professor, sexuality educator, Christian therapist, licensed professional counselor, and media personality in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His book, Pocket Guide for Young Men Without Fathers, Important Life Lessons, was published January 2018. He is also the host of the Spotify podcast, My Mortality Matters, the voices and lives of Black men, and co-host of the podcast, The Common Guy and The Doctor. He counsels individuals, couples, and families that are dealing with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, relationship issues, domestic violence, and sexual identity. John is an assistant professor at LaSalle University, Department of Public Health and Nutrition. John has also served as adjunct professor at LaSalle University and Drexel University, teaching courses that focuses on sexual violence, domestic violence, and sexuality. John is a member of the American Mental Health Counselors Association and Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. John serves as vice president on the board of the Men's Center for Growth and Change and serves as board member on the Strong Families Commission in Philadelphia. What's going on, Dr. Taylor?
Good evening. Good evening. It's great to be here.
Oh man, it's good to have you, brother. It's so good to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
How's everything?
Everything is great. It's been a very great day, and I hear your conversation earlier about regifting.
Right. Do you regift?
I have in my life before. Because folks find things for me that I don't. It's not really my flavor to wear. So I kind of give those other people who wear those things.
Right. Oh man,
it doesn't go to waste. So.
Oh man, not certain how you enjoying the holiday season, or if you do celebrate the holiday season, but we certainly wish you, the best during this time. One of the things we reached out and we talked to you about was domestic violence and men simply being a victim of domestic violence. With your wealth of experience, we wanted to tap into and see what it is that is going through not only the mind of victims, but also the mind of abusers during this time. And we are a men's platform, and we wanted to bring you in, just to get some idea from you when it comes to mental I'm sorry, I was going to say mental health, but when it comes to domestic violence. Dr. Taylor, if you don't mind, can you share a little bit about you and your practice, and and who you are with some of our audience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So part of my career, I worked 20 years in law enforcement before I became a therapist, as a probation officer, prison guard, and a domestic violence facilitator for several years. And part of my work was working with men and women who were abusers.
Okay.
We worked with men in groups of 16 in the group, or women of 16 in the group at my practice in North Carolina, understanding what domestic violence is for them, why they chose to abuse their partner and girlfriend, and also understanding that domestic violence is never okay, whether you're dealing with a same-sex couple or a heterosexual couple. And part of the reasons look at is why domestic violence happens. It's really about power and control. It's a desire to control the other person's comings and goings, who they choose to talk to, who they don't talk to, their sexual energy with you, forcing them to have sex against their will. So a lot of it is really about just controlling a person's overall life. And in my practice in Philadelphia, I work with a lot of couples. Well, not couples. If you're in a couple and you're experiencing domestic violence, I would not see you because it's not safe to work with people who are actively involved in domestic violence. Okay. So I would not see you if you're currently involved with someone who's abusing you. I work with victims and batterers dealing with domestic violence in my current practice, and trying to understand the mental health implications for individuals that are living in this space in their life.
Okay. Dr. Taylor, can you, I was actually going to touch on it, but you touched on it already, just the psyche behind the power and the control aspect of it from the abusers. If you don't mind touching on that and what that looks like coming from abusers.
So when we think about it, can I share my screen with you? Because I can show you there's five different types of different types of abuse that people experience. If I can share this, I can show you my PowerPoint here, I think.
Okay.
Is it allowing me to share? Let's see.
I'm not sure. I know I can share it on my end.
Maybe not. I can't seem to get there.
Okay.
But I'll just tell you. So there's five types of domestic violence that we see happens in relationships. The first type is going to be verbal abuse, where you are intentionally saying to your partner things that you know are tearing down their soul. So I'm going to tell you, I'm the only one for you. No one else is going to want you based on how you look, how you seem, your personality. And what that does is tears down the person's self-esteem and self-confidence, so they believe you're the only one for them. There's also, as we see oftentimes, is physical violence, where we see people who are being shot, stabbed, and recognizing that stabbing someone to death is the most intimate death that we have, because you're literally stabbing them to death. And stabbing someone is a closeness, is an intimacy in stabbing someone to death. As opposed to shooting, you can do it from across the room.
Right.
We also see sexual abuse is part of the process. Yes, men can be sexually abused by their partners. A lot of men encounter sexual abuse where they're forced to have sex with their spouses. If you are familiar with the TV show with the family who lived, oh my God, in Chicago, where oh my God, Shameless is the TV show I'm thinking of,
I haven't seen it.
where the daughter raped the pizza guy, had a kid by him. So men can be sexually assaulted and abused in their relationships.
Right.
But sexual abuse is one of those ways. Also, technological abuse is also a way. Abuse someone through technology, either is going to be putting a camera into their bag, or you can put a microphone and follow them around wherever they're going. You can go now and go to Lowe's and buy a tracking device, put it under their car, and wherever they are, you can find them anytime you want to find them, or in their bag or in their work bag. So wherever you are, I know you are at all times. And then the other way we see it is going to be through financial abuse. The idea like if you get paid today, or I'm going to use all the money here. I've had cases a lot where, because we know 95% of cases are women who have been abused by men.
Okay.
And 5% of the cases reported are men who are abused by women. And we oftentimes see that people who are dealing with financial abuse are being told where the money goes, and they cannot really take care of themselves. Those are 5 types of domestic abuse, and also emotional abuse to make it 6. The idea of beating a person down emotionally to where you believe like all you can do is be with this person who's abusing you. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
And you can't leave because you believe if I leave this person, I won't find anybody else.
Right.
And they have batterers are very, very convincing, and they're extremely manipulative. Having worked with these men and women for over 20 years, I can tell you, meeting a batterer, you would never know they're a batterer when you first meet them, because they are extremely charming. They will make you believe you're only one in the world. And you don't realize you're involved in domestic violence until you're in the relationship.
And what does it look like? How does that start though? Is it one of those progressions? Is there a progression to it, or is there like a sudden start to the abuse?
There's a progression to the abuse. And I give an analogy oftentimes of a frog in a pot of water on the stove, right?
Yeah,
I got you.
The frogs in the water swimming along is very comfortable.
Yeah.
And then eventually I would turn the heat up more and more and more each time. And first time I could call you out of your name. You may feel like, oh, you call me that? I'm sorry, that won't happen again. Then it may be what I may push you once. You may feel, well, he didn't mean to push me this way, so that won't happen again. Or she didn't mean to push me this way, it won't happen again.
Right.
The issue with it continues to happen, and the more the batterer recognizes they can get away with these things with you, convince you that it's your fault that this is happening. Had you not done X, I would not have had to curse you out in front of your friends. I would not have had to push you down the steps. So it's a very gradual progression of events. And then once you're in this relationship, you realize you are kind of like in some ways trapped in this cycle of believing this person is going to change, because the honeymoon phase of domestic violence, there's a cycle of violence that we see, right?
Okay.
And there's 3 different phases to the cycle. The first phase is the incident, to where we are just having the first phase is where there's like an incident where we're just having a conversation and we're going along. There's nothing is happening. We're walking on eggshells. Like it's kind of like, like someone says, are you okay? I'm fine, but you're not okay, but you don't want to tell me you're not okay.
Right.
And then the next thing we look at is the next cycle is the violence, where the violence happens, where I may punch you or I may hit you. But then in the honeymoon phase, I'm going to apologize to you. I'm going to tell you I'm sorry. It won't ever happen again. And I may buy you nice things. And so that's how the cycle of violence continues. Because once you're in the cycle, your batterer will tell you, I'm sorry. And you find yourself 10 years later, 5 years later, caught into this cycle. Yes, but it's very gradual, and then you're stuck in it in some cases.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ward. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say it was funny how he brought up financial abuse. That's something that most of us would never ever think of. Like, of being a form of abuse, because that that struck a chord with me because
I could tell.
I went
I
through
could tell. Yeah, I
that.
could tell.
And it was crazy, and it was gradual, and it was
Mhm.
like, me and my ex-wife, we came up with an agreement of disbursement of funds, and it was like, well, I ain't got to give you all of it, and then I ain't got to give you shit, and then
Mm.
so and I just
You went along with it?
I went along with it. I mean, because
Mm.
I was the provider anyway, but
Mhm.
you know I just never thought of that actually being a form of abuse.
Dr. Teller, is there like it, when you mentioned it's a progression and you'll never see, so there's no red flags that you'd be able to see, or are they?
Well, there are
There
some
are.
flags that you can see,
Subtle,
but
maybe subtle.
some of them can be subtle.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, we don't want to see the things that we see,
Right.
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
people, and as Mary Angelou always have said, folks show you who you are, who they are. We don't want to
Mhm.
believe them, right? But people show
Absolutely.
you these signs of jealousy. You spend time with your friends more than me. Your
Mhm.
friends don't
Mm.
like me. You should now spend time more with me and not with them. So
Mm.
isolation begins. Or someone who tells you how you should dress every time you leave the house. You shouldn't wear that shirt. Or a lot of ladies don't want the guys wearing gray sweatpants.
Right. And some do want us to wear gray
Right.
sweatpants.
Yeah, on the flip side, some good.
Yeah.
Or a lot of guys tell a lot of women, a lot of guys tell their females how they should dress. Well, also just think about this. It's not just a heterosexual situation. Is also really looking at same-sex couples, LGBTQIA individuals, gay
Mhm.
men, bisexual men, trans men are also experiencing domestic violence as well. But the signs are prevalent. But it's about, are you gonna see the signs? And one of the
Right.
Okay.
main things is that the battery will make you believe you are crazy. Like,
Mm.
Mm.
for
Mhm.
example, you ever lose your keys somewhere
Mhm.
Yeah.
at home?
Mhm.
So imagine you
Yeah.
trying to find your keys, and I'm the batterer, and I have your keys. I'm like, you see my
Mhm.
keys? No, I haven't seen them at all. And then I put them down. Oh, I'm sorry, I found your keys just now. I'm playing mind games with you
Okay.
Wow.
because you believe I'm going to make you believe you. I'm convincing you that you're losing, that you're crazy. And so all of these signs are happening: the jealousy, the insecurity, the idea of like your friends, your family, everybody's out to get us.
Mhm.
The idea of like they don't want us to win this relationship, so they kind of like try
Okay.
to sabotage us. So all those things are warning signs, but we have to
Mm.
be able to look at those and
Mhm.
see those as they're happening. Yes, and gaslighting also happens as well.
Mhm.
When
Hey,
your
Doc.
partner may say things to you that they know is a trigger for you,
Mhm.
but because they know that, they can use that against you later.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Hey, Doc. In your research and in your study, it sounds like some of these triggers and these red flags that come about. What are some of the reasons of why people continue to stay in the relationship,
Mhm.
knowing that they're being abused?
So sometimes folks don't know they're being abused. I'll put that out
Mhm.
Okay.
until someone kind of points out, oh, that's financial abuse. Like we just had a conversation
Right.
now.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, that's not okay. Or people sometimes think for various reasons. It could be financial. I can afford to leave.
Mhm.
It could be children.
Okay.
It could be love, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
Because I love you and I believe that eventually this is going to end. You're going to be better to me. I have hope for you, hope for us.
That hope for
People,
change.
a hope for
Mm.
change, and
Right.
Gotcha.
people stay. And we cannot tell folks to leave their relationships.
Hmm.
People almost oftentimes say, "Why don't she leave? Why don't he leave?"
Right.
Well, it's not up for us to tell them to leave. Where are they going to go? If
Right.
they
Right. Right.
are
It's
they
easy.
coming here with you in
Mhm.
your house with your family?
Right. Right.
Right? And recognizing also, we think about shelters. There's not a lot of shelter space for victims of domestic violence, especially men who are being abused. There's not a lot of shelters for us at all. Men who are
Mhm.
victims of domestic violence. So where
Okay.
are they going to go? Are they going to leave and go somewhere?
Yeah.
Oftentimes
Yeah.
not.
So, Doc, there's a story you touched on it briefly. There's a story that I remember, I recall, of a married couple. On the outside, everything looked phenomenal, On the inside, they had a lot of struggle, and the woman, the wife, was the abuser. Um, in the story that I recall, it appeared as if the wife was trying to set the husband up for failure. So she asked him if he could. He wasn't a hands-on type of person, so he wasn't a builder. And she asked him if he could build this shelf, if he could put this shelf together. And he knew, and she knew that he wasn't able to do it. And during the process of him trying to do it, he started getting this anxiety in terms of what's going to happen when she sees that I can't do this. So when she came home, before he even was done, she went right into a rage. She went right into a rage about how he was incapable of completing his task. And then it was the yelling, and then it was the physical abuse. Fortunately, in this case, a neighbor heard them, and the neighbor came, bust through the door, and was able to support him. The one thing that stood out for me in that story was the setting him up for failure. That I'm gonna set him up for failure, and is this a way that I can relinquish some of my anger, some of my choices, in a negative way towards him. So I for me, it was the setup stood out to me. Do you find that to be normal?
Well, what is normal, right? I don't use that word very often.
You're
right?
You're right about that. You're right.
So one thing I will say though, it's classic in some cases.
Okay.
In domestic relationships, the abuser will create spaces to where the victim cannot be successful.
Okay.
The victim also knows this is not going to be successful for them. And so what's happening is we know eventually there's going to be some incident that's going to happen, some violence is going to take place because I know I cannot fix a shelf, or I'm not going to do this thing the way you want it done, because it's almost the idea of not being good enough. And the batterer consistently reminds the victim, you're not good enough. You're not the person I want you to be. You're not this, you're not that. All designed to tear down their self-esteem and self-value and create anxiety and depression and trauma. And one thing you recognize also is the post-traumatic, the traumatic bonding theory, which indicates people who are involved in domestic violence relationships or involved in trauma are connected in their trauma. So because I know that we are involved in domestic violence, we can be connected in this abuse in a way that neither one of us can leave, because the trauma is holding us in this relationship together. Okay.
So what's the idea? What's your thought process when it comes to trauma? In terms of the abuser, I know we're acting out what potentially could have happened to them. Is it not merely just power and control, or is it truly them acting out some of the things that have happened to them emotionally, physically, as a child?
Well, it's a combination of things, right? And one of those things could be what they have seen. Well, first I would say this, because they can. People who choose to be abusers is because they can. That's one of the main reasons we find. It's also going to be based on what they saw as a kid. When we think about Eric Erickson's theory of development and social learning theory, we learn by watching other people. So because I may see my mom or dad get involved in domestic violence as a kid, as an adult, I may become that person now who is violent in my relationships or not. Not saying that all people who witness this are abusers, because that's not really true. It's not a general statement.
And vice versa.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So it's not about what you see all the time, but sometimes a lot of guys I work with, some of them saw the case. It's also being sexually assaulted. Some men who are younger were sexually molested as kids. So part of the way to take control back is to control somebody else. because when you were younger and you were sexually assaulted, that's not a choice that you made consciously.
Right.
Someone
Right.
has
Right.
just chosen to violate you, and
Mhm.
they should be in jail. But
Absolutely.
a lot of black men don't talk about being sexually assaulted, and they in turn create in their relationships this control dynamic to where now I'm in control.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of varying reasons why people are abusive.
Doug, do you ever think that that stigma will be broken in terms of when it comes to black men speaking out about abuse? You know, is there? Do you feel like I feel like over the last several years, there's been some conversation. You know, guys speaking out more. You know, do you think there will be a point in what needs to be done for men to speak out when it comes to the traumatic experience, whether it was physically, sexual abuse, or whatever?
And I think that men are speaking up more to your point, but I think
Mhm.
one of the things we have to recognize is that the stigma is real because there's an idea when we think about sexuality, right? As a sexual, my PhD is in sexuality studies. So we look at sexuality, and a lot of men are question their sexuality. They've been sexually molested, or
Mhm.
both think that they're gay because they were sexually molested. And so sometimes people don't want to come out with that because they don't want to be seen as that person.
Okay.
And
Okay.
recognizing that that stigma runs through our community to the black community in rampant ways. It's gotten a lot better. Homophobia has decreased in the black community, but it's still prevalent. So looking
Mhm.
at men and sexually assaulted are worried about the outcome in some cases
Okay.
for telling their partners, telling their girlfriends that they were a victim of sexual assault. So, but hopefully one day with research and with time, it can get better for people. It's gotten a lot better, but it can get better. So I have hope that it will.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, I you know, just yeah, just having some conversations with people, you know, I think that stigma, you know, black men, you know, don't seek help. And I know personally over the
Is
last
it,
several years, that we have been seeking help and support, you know. But
so
I
you
definitely
feel as
want to know about that.
like do you feel as though it's like more of being clowned by your peers of
I
the
don't think
reason
about
why that stigma is around?
I don't think it's about being clown. I think it's about the idea of being judged,
Hmm.
Mhm.
the idea of being
Hmm.
seen as less than, right? The idea of like less than um, a man that you were sexually molested,
Right.
which is ridiculous when you think about the fact that there's a kid who was 8 years
Right.
old who was sexually assaulted by older people. It's not the person's
Mhm.
fault.
Right.
So really think about how do we get rid of some of
Well,
the
not
ignorance around it.
yeah, well, not as far as the molestation, more
Mm.
or less. And I know we probably haven't touched on it yet, but as far as it's like a man being raped.
Yeah,
We always say like how can a dude be raped?
yeah, but
I understand it can happen now,
yeah,
but growing up, it was always like, I don't get that. That it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah,
it's not
that's what it
about you,
was
man.
growing up. Like you should be happy that, you know, somebody took you, you
Right.
know. Yeah, it
yeah.
don't make no in any sense. But
Right.
yeah.
And we know that one in 19 men have been sexually assaulted or raped,
Hmm.
right? But most of those men don't come forward until they are older in their lives
Hmm.
and they are experiencing some level of trauma, some
Hmm.
depression they can't explain, and
Right.
because in my practice, most of the clients I work with are black men.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Some have been molested, some have not been, but a lot of my clients are 95% of them are black men
Okay.
seeking help, recognizing as they are aging and as in they're younger that life is not okay.
Hmm.
I need to get myself together. So men are seeking therapy a lot more. That stigma of coming to therapy is really wearing away in the black
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we recognize that we need to talk.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
my research focused on structural violence and how it impacts black men's mental health and sexual behavior. And one of the things I did, I interviewed 20 black men for my research study. Interviews were supposed to be like 45 minutes. Some of them were an hour, hour and a
Yeah.
half.
Hmm.
Because once we start talking as black men, we keep talking. We have a lot to say.
Hmm.
And so unpacking that is important. So
Right.
Right.
hopefully it's
Right.
going to get better.
Right. Right. Now we definitely have a lot to say. Dr. Taylor, you believe that domestic violence isn't an anger management problem, but about the choice to be violent. If you can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. I believe that to my bones, because people anger. So, for example, a person who has anger management issues will fight anywhere. They will fight their boss at work. They will tear down stuff in the street. They will raise hell everywhere they go.
Mhm.
But domestic violence is about a choice, because you choose to go home and abuse your wife and your children,
Mhm.
because that's your safe space, right?
Mhm.
Because I can do this here, and the consequences, I may go to jail, or my wife may not call the police. But I'm not angry. It's not an anger management issue. I'm choosing to be violent here. And a lot of times they may send batterers to anger management programs for treatment, which is ineffective, because it's not about anger management. It's about, I can control my anger enough to abuse my wife and girlfriend at home.
So it's more so. So it's more so a choice. I get that. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It definitely makes sense to see an abuser being able to be productive, and manage their anger in the workplace when they're out at the restaurants with their friends, but when they're home, they're raising hell and abusing their kids and their significant other. I definitely can see that, and how that makes sense, that it is a choice for sure.
When we think about batterers, they're more like, I call them Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Mm-hmm.
where the guy outside is not the guy you see at home.
Right.
Guy could be the pastor of your local church. He's loving, praying for people. He's all these wonderful things. But at home, he's a hellraiser. He's a monster inside the house.
Right.
Yeah, that sheep clothing come right off.
Yeah. And when victims express that my husband abuses me, who's going to believe her? Not this guy, not Robert. He's so giving. He's so loving. But Robert's a hellraiser. But he's convinced really about social politics. I want to be seen as this really nice guy in the public. I'm narcissistic, but at home I can tear my family down.
Yeah. Dr. Teller, one thing, Monica, I put this up. Monica Wilds, she made a comment that particularly law enforcement, they get away with it more than anyone. Do you find that, not implicating anyone, do you find that to be true?
What I find to be true is that law enforcement officers who are involved in domestic violence, yes, there are some. I won't go into a lot.
Okay.
But there are some. And a lot of that could be, again, the idea of presenting themselves as one way, but at home, they're somebody else. And maybe they also may have, in some cases, I worked in 20 years in the system, they may have an in with the system and can kind of like get around some of their criminal justice, domestic violence things.
Right.
But one thing we know to be true is that in Philadelphia, the law enforcement here, the police department here, hold their officers accountable for domestic violence, and they're not going to get away with it. So that's refreshing information.
So, Doc, some of them can get away with it simply because they could just pretty much state their position, and kind of gives them a pass on a domestic violence incident within their home.
Right.
Is that safe to say? Gotcha. Okay.
Some can, yeah, because the idea, but I think what's happening now is that we encourage victims, if the case is happening against you, take pictures, text message him, record him raising hell inside the house, record him calling you names, because when you go to court for these things, you need evidence. Your word against his oftentimes is not enough. So you have to bring proof with you. So I tell men who are abusing with their wives and girlfriends, bring proof with you that your wife is slapping you or cussing you out. Otherwise, they aren't going to believe you.
Yeah. Doc, that's something that I was thinking about when I knew that you were going to be on. The narrative that we've recognized and that we've seen as youngsters was that, men always abuse the women.
Yeah.
Now, there's cases now where these men are coming forward to discuss that they are now, being abused by women. Now, I was like, wow, how is that? But you touched on that when you said they're now bringing evidence that these women are slapping them and hitting them and calling them names. Is there any other evidence that these men are bringing to pretty much plead their case?
But there's also a lot of like testimonial of friends. Like we may see people who have interactions with women who are heterosexual people, the girlfriend may slap them in front of their friends.
Mm.
People sometimes don't take that as serious as they should. People may laugh, make fun of him, but these guys are bringing this as evidence. I have friends who can testify that this happened to me. They may also bring their children involved in the case to say this is happening to me, because women are abusing men at high levels. But the issue is men are embarrassed to come forward because of stigma, shame,
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
fear of rejection.
Right.
They don't come forth as often. That's why we have 5% of cases involving men in the court system. But it's a lot more than that if we really get men who were abused would come, but they're not going to come, because how can your wife or girlfriend abuse you? When we think about gay men, the court may recognize that as a simple assault case. Two men are fighting and not see it as domestic violence.
Right.
But it's all domestic violence.
True. I'm gonna read Kat's. She says men are taught not to hit women. That's counterproductive when they're abused, because it's societal hit and embarrassment.
That is true.
Yeah.
I think people should keep their hands to themselves.
Right.
Go ahead, Ward.
I said that was going back to what I was saying about, a man being clown. Like, yeah, you got your ass beat by a girl. That was kind of what I was getting at when I was saying about the stigmatism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I think about that, Ward. When we were coming up, it's something that we would probably do. We would clown somebody if she smacked him in the back of his head or say something, because we really didn't know what was going on at home.
Right. Exactly.
But it would be a comment, you're not man enough, you're not this, you're not that, you letting her do this, and it does do something to the psyche of a male victim, where he's not going to come out and certainly feel embarrassed. Dr. Taylor, can you talk about a victim that leaves an abusive relationship and ends up in another abusive relationship?
Yeah. So a person who's been abused, if they are able to leave, the person will take 7 times before they leave their relationship. They may stay with that person. They will leave eventually 7 times after that time. They may leave the relationship, but if they haven't received counseling, sought help around that relationship, they may find themselves attracted to another person who, at the time they meet them, is not exhibiting abusive behavior. But there is this energy that men who are batterers and women who are abusers have. It's hard to explain, but there's this chemistry that people can kind of feel, like this person may have low self-esteem, may have low self-confidence, and they may find themselves in another relationship that's now also abusive. Not because they chose that, because this person represented to them a refreshing view. If you just come out of a partner abusing you, now you meet someone who actually buys you things, tell you look nice, treats you well in the beginning.
Yeah.
All this to lure you in, but also, again, at the end of the day, again, to control you. And so folks can find themselves, easily into another relationship until they break the cycle and recognize what's going on for me, that these people are picking me out of the lineup in some cases. What's happening with my self-esteem, my self-confidence, that I am finding myself in these relationships. We don't blame victims for their lives, because it's not their fault. These people are choosing to abuse them. But we try to help them understand what's going on for you, that this is where you are right now. Help them unpack this cycle for themselves.
I think that's one of the main reasons that we as the fellas, we try to create a safe place, a platform to, provide some conversation for people, whether they're going through grief, whether they're going through, domestic violence, and going through a plethora of different things that's affecting them, that they can, reach out and call and talk to somebody, because they may not have the resources. One of the things that someone mentioned, Nikki, is many don't know what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. And, I recall, in the past, some people thinking that because I get upset and because I become aggressive towards you, it's a display of love. and this is how they show that they love me, because they're becoming aggressive, because they're, you know, becoming, their rage is coming out and it's taking me to a different place.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot. We see that, right? People believe like if this
Right.
guy exhibits control, like if he stood up for me or he kind of like defended me against these people, then he must love me. But
Right.
recognize that's not about you, that's about him.
Right.
But he's choosing to control you by his behavior. So again, looking at how do we get people who are batterers to change their behavior? And people who are batterers can change. They can choose not to become batterers the rest of their life. I did that program for 10 years or so, working with men who were abusers and changing their mindset. So people can change from being abusers, but they have to want to change that.
Right. Right. Right.
I recognize
And
that I
that's,
can't.
and that's a choice.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah.
It's a choice.
And Doc,
Yeah.
some of this can take pretty much a lifetime to realize what you're struggling with internally.
Yes,
That's safe to say.
it's safe to say.
Mm.
Yeah. But I think people oftentimes know what they're dealing with internally, but it's about exposing it for themselves.
Okay.
We lie to ourselves oftentimes, but I'm okay. But people who come into therapy, before you get to us, you know what's happening with you.
Right.
And either you choose to oppress it, bury it down because it's sometimes too painful to acknowledge who you really are. Or it's just embarrassing to acknowledge who you really are. So people have to get to that place where they're comfortable now saying, I'm this guy who does X, Y, Z. It's also be important to know that a person is not their behavior. A batterer is not his behavior.
Explain that. Explain that, Doc.
Yeah, because behavior can be changed. Like that's not who I am; it's what I do. Right. So I can be a guy who chooses to abuse my wife, my partner, my same-sex partner, but that's not who I am. That's what I choose to do. So behavior can be changed. So I try to tell men who are abusers, that's not you. That's how you choose to act.
Right.
But you're not identified by your behavior.
And Doc, when you say that to them, that's pretty much helping them psychologically by telling them that that's not who they are. That's just an act that they're performing.
It sounds like it detaches them from the behavior too.
Right.
When you verbalize it that way, that you know this is not you. You're separate from the behavior that you're displaying. Yeah.
And that gives people hope. Oh, I can, because sometimes people who are abusers don't want to be. Let's just make that clear, right? But it's because they have gotten to a system behaving that way badly. Often they just choose to do that. They think that's who they are. Right. But maybe to recognize I can change my behavior. Some guys I work with have gotten really emotional. Like, oh, I thought I was just this guy who beat women or beat men. You don't have to be that guy.
Yeah.
So choosing, it's all choice here. It's not choice.
Well, the flip side of that, Kat says, does that give them a scapegoat?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I know we think about the DSM-5 giving diagnoses for batterers, like narcissistic personality disorder, some cases of bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder. Is what we see batterers most oftentimes are diagnosed with. It's not an excuse. It just tells them what's happening for them psychologically to work on those areas. So it's not scapegoating, giving them a reason, oh, why I do this because. But I think when we know why we do something, we can change the behavior. And not knowing why we do it, we just continue to have bad behavior. So it's about educating them to change.
Yeah. Now, you made a good point when you just mentioned the labeling of an abuser, that is their label, and the importance and how paramount it is to detach them from that label. Sometimes I've wondered that when people have a label, that this is the only label that they have. This is the thing that I hold dear to me because this is what everyone knows me as. So this is what I have to be, and this is what I have to act out because this is the label that people know me as, and this is my only level of importance, if I must say. You know, I think of not to get biblical, but I think of Peter. And Peter, he was a fisherman, but when he slowed down with his fisherman, he still had his knife. And he was known to still hold his knife from when he was a fisherman, you know. And for me, it's the same thing as labels. When we hold those labels, whether it's a good or a bad thing, is what people know me to be. And you know, and that's who I'm going to be, because that's who people know me to be.
Yeah, and we act out that, like we
Yeah.
see when kids are in school and their name this is the bad kid,
Right.
that kid begins to exhibit bad behavior.
Right, because he's the bad kid.
Right.
Exactly. So we become what we're told we already are.
Right.
We are recognizing folks cannot identify you to be something. You have to kind of choose that for yourself.
Sure. That's it. You know, you mentioned earlier, before we close, I got a couple more. You mentioned earlier about the shelters. You said there's not a lot of shelters. Is there a lot of resources when it comes to male victims?
The answer will be no.
Really?
Because we recognize when we think about stats, when we look at statistics drive income, statistics drive
funding.
revenue.
Right.
It drives revenue, right? So if we don't have men reporting that they are victims of domestic violence, there may be idea there's no need for that.
Right.
But recognizing the need is strong, but until men feel comfortable coming forth, acknowledging that, we're still not going to have shelters for men who are victims of domestic violence. But and also for women's shelters is very, very scarce. First of all, Philadelphia, we have 2 shelters here in the city of Philadelphia, as large as we are, and most times it's full of female victims. If you are a lesbian, the confusion becomes who is the victim and the batterer. I guess because who gets to the shelter first in those cases. But when you think about women's shelters, there's only 2 in the city, and most of them are full. So women are oftentimes turned away, or they are put in hotels in the city from the batterer. But the issue is getting a shelter built in the city or any city goes through ordinance, has to go through a certain zoning, also neighbors, because folks don't want to shelter in their neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they assume it's going to be violence and a lot of ruckus and chaos.
Right.
But oftentimes the shelters are so inconspicuous, you wouldn't notice the shelter even there.
Right.
But there are no fully ran men's shelters in the city of Philadelphia. There's one agency, Men's Lutheran Settlement House, where a man can go and get victim services. But there's nowhere for a man to stay in the city who's a victim of domestic violence.
Okay.
And so in order to change that, we have to change some of the numbers.
Right.
Speak up, fellas. If you're getting abused, speak up.
Yeah.
And create the need, because that's where
create the need. Yes, and we can get the help.
Yeah, man. When you started mentioning that, the first thing I thought about was funding. That's the first thing that came to my mind. It's funding. So someone's going through. This will be my last one. Someone's going through some type of abuse, whether it be physical, emotional, verbal abuse. You know, right now, what are some things that you could mention to them in terms of some coping strategies to be able to deal with their now, if they feel like they can't get out, you know, of the situation, and that they can't, you know, physically leave? But what are some things that you would share with victims of domestic violence?
One thing I would share with people who can't leave is have a friend, right? Most people have one person they can call and talk to. So talk to the friend you trust. Also keep a diary of your experiences. It's important for court records later, because oftentimes we may see people who may kill their batterer, and that's the battered woman syndrome, and that would require them to go to court with evidence of being assaulted as a victim. Also, I encourage people to do meditation. Yeah, while your batterer is not home 24/7, hopefully he leaves, give you some space, or she gives you some space. So kind of like do meditation, do some deep breathing, some coping strategies in that way.
Right.
Yes, Ward. All those
Ward's
things.
meditating right now. We see you, Ward.
All those things work, and also really thinking about understanding your value. Understanding this person that you are with did not give you birth, did not give you life. Only God has done that for all of us, and life more abundantly. So thinking about, the spirituality of all of those things, and living in your greatness, and hopefully that will give this person space and time where they can leave. And if they can't leave, it gives them some sense of peace while they're in this chaos in their life. Because everybody can't leave a relationship that's abusive, which is sad. Everybody is not able to leave.
Right.
Yeah. I saw somewhere where I was, just doing my prep, and last week I saw that, oftentimes men don't want to leave. There's times, not often, there's times that men don't want to leave for fear of them leaving their child with a violent woman. And so they choose to stay, in terms of so they can protect their children as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, and that happens. People don't want to leave the children. A lot of women don't want to leave their kids behind. Oftentimes, women will take their kids when they leave.
Right.
You very seldom will see a woman who leave her kids at home and abuse her. But men oftentimes will leave. If they leave, they will leave their kids home with the wife or the girlfriend. So yeah, I can understand that can be a case. But thinking about how people find their voice and find their way through, it's gonna be important in the long run.
Yeah, fellas, y'all got anything else for that?
Nah, man, that was some deep. That was some deep. That was deep.
You brought it home, man. I mean, you were kind of like answering the questions that I was going to ask in your conversation.
Well, part of the work, and I appreciate that, because part of the work for me is like, I teach these classes at LaSalle. I've done this work for over 20 years. It's really about, for me, educating people what domestic violence looks like and how we can say it's one thing, but we don't really know until we're in it.
Right.
Or see people who are in that relationship, in that life, trying to find their way out of the darkness. But batteries are manipulative, and they convince you that you're the only one. They're the only one for you, and they keep you in.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest of recognizing that you are being abused. Because a lot of us think it was just, so-called normal behavior. I know we don't like the normal, but normal behavior to them, because they either seen it coming up, they experienced it coming up, and that's all they know. Because it's funny is y'all know I'm always on my good times, but it was just like the one episode. Hey, stop laughing at me, brother. But the one episode, Florida was a little upset. They didn't know what was wrong with her. She went to a group, and all the women, their main thing was like, because Wanda was like, if my husband don't hit me once a week, I don't think he loved me.
Wow.
It's crazy, because it's just a normalcy to some people.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that was the episode. I remember that was a good episode. It was sad.
Yes, that was.
But it really, I think people don't really understand what domestic violence really is and how devastating it is people's lives, and they become this is what my normal is. But I'm used to it.
I'm used to it.
And without it, do you really love me?
Right.
So I tell we have a lot. I know we got to go, right? But I know we have a lot of young people,
you good.
Teenagers. We see dating violence, like young kids around 13, 14 years old getting in relationships with young boys who are abusing them. But if he doesn't pick on her or take her phone or go through her phone or act jealous, love her, recognizing that's battery. And we have a lot of teen batterers, a lot of victims of teenage years who are being abused by their partners and girlfriends right now.
Yeah, and what ultimately they ultimately end up being women who know how to who have normalized being abused, from teenagers to women. Wow.
And also young boys who are also victims of violence begin to see their value in being selected by a girl. And also times when men are demasculated in their relationships, and that impacts their self-esteem, their value, their ability to go out and find the job or believe in themselves even. So that cycle creates a whole nother level for men, for the mentality of men. It is multifaceted and complicated. It's not a very cut and dry. It's very layered. with domestic violence, and people have to be able to find their way through and out
Mm.
and recognize where they are.
Yeah.
And how it's impacting them.
Now earlier, I don't remember if it was when we were backstage or when you first came on. You were kind of like making. He said something about mental health, and he was like, "Nah, it's not." Is there a real tie between mental health and the abuser, and being in an abusive relationship?
So when we think about men who are abusers and women,
Mhm.
people who are batterers, there are some cases there is a DSM-5 diagnosis. It could be all of those things: narcissism, grandiose sense of self, bipolar, borderline personality disorder. Which borderline personality disorder is a person who wants you to be close to them, and then when you're close, they push you away because like, why are you here? But they wanted it. And so in some cases, mental health issue could be depression. When we think about men who are depressed, oftentimes show anger when they're depressed because it's easier to explain that I'm angry than I'm sad. And so we see, so anger issues in some cases where not anger management issues, but person who has explosive disorder, just explodes without any reason, and that's out of control. So those are some of the things we see.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Nah, Dr. Teller, man, we appreciate you, man. Being able to unpack some things for us on here. And again, my prayer is that someone, somewhere else, whether it's in another state, whether it's in another country, are able to, hear the words, and the wisdom and experience that you share with us here, and be able to look and search and get some help, make a phone call, so we thank you, man, for just being a part of it, hanging out with us.
Doc.
I appreciate the
And
conversation.
Doc, if you can, man, we'd like to have you back again, man, sometime in 2022, man.
Yeah,
I'd love to come back. I mean, I have a lot of things and talk about a lot of things. So yeah.
Doc, you concluded our last episode of 2021, sir.
Oh wow.
We appreciate
Yes.
Yes. So that's nice. So Doc, we're gonna take you backstage for a second, and then we just gonna conclude and begin to wrap up. Ward, do you got anything for us, Ward? Or you
I got a little something. Oh yeah, I got a man law.
Got a man law?
I got a man law, and then I just want to put a little disclaimer out there before we start man law.
Oh boy,
just a little, my man laws aren't always serious. Some are just for entertainment purposes only.
Hey Ward, can I you mind if I give you your intro first though? Like I wouldn't mind.
Well, he wanted to put up his disclaimer first, he said.
Okay.
Nah, well, yeah.
Can I do your intro, brother?
Yeah, go for it, brother.
Shopping bags, they way down her arm.
Go ahead. There you go now, Ward. You gotta
right.
I gotta
It's
introduce you
official now.
right, brother.
Yeah. Man law number 11.
What we got, brother?
We got keep your hands to yourself.
Okay.
Kind of ties into tonight.
It does.
Definitely ties into
that's true.
Man should not hit a woman.
Hmm.
But if she wearing your ass out, it's time to protect yourself.
Like you said, it's kind of sort of.
It's kind of sort of.
You're going against what Doc just shared with us.
I know. Like I said, man, there's a disclaimer. Sometimes it's just for entertainment purposes.
Entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
Nah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean,
man.
granted, yes, we should all keep our hands to ourselves. There's
sure.
no need to be hitting each other. But, when it comes to it, just like, sometimes you do have that woman that want to come at you like a man. Sometimes, I treat you like a man. I mean, that's the way I feel about it.
That's how you feel about it?
I feel, but you come at me like a man, you're going to get dealt with like a man.
Oh,
not to say I'm going to.
Yeah. And this has never, for those that's watching and listening, this has never happened for Ward. I want to put that out there for it. It has never happened. He's never been in that situation.
I ain't never had to fight a chick like that.
Yeah. You know what Doc was talking, the thing I was thinking about was when we were in elementary school and when
Oh man.
playfully hit a young lady, that
Right.
you're interested in, that you like. And I'm in
Mm.
my head, I'm like, oh, Keith, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Right. Right.
That
Thinking
that was
about
called
that.
the what was that? The love tap, right?
That was a love
Yeah,
tap.
love
Yeah,
tap.
Love
yeah,
tap.
yeah.
Yeah, love tap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Warsman Law, keep your hands
To
to
yourself.
yourself. We want to give the domestic violence hotline number 1-800-799-7233. Again, that's 1-800-799-7233. If you are going through some things personally at home, some domestic violence at home, whether you're a man or male or female, give this phone number a call, 1-800-799-7233. Please give them a
Hey,
call.
or just to put it out there, or whatever you identify as, because
Right,
we got
right,
yeah.
right, right. Yeah, nah, good stuff, Ward.
Yeah.
Check my brother Ward out.
Go
Good
ahead,
stuff.
I'm
Ward.
learning. I'm
Man,
learning.
oh,
I'm
Good
growing.
stuff. So we want to
thank you, Iris.
thanks Iris. I'm gonna put it up there.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, sis. Again, 800-799-7233, domestic violence hotline. If you're going through some things, whether it's physical, whether it's verbal, whether it's emotional, please just give a phone
Or
call so you could get some
financial.
support.
Oh,
Financial as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Ward. Just get that phone number call so you could get some support and some direction. Also, Dr. John Taylor, we shared his IG and his Twitter handles, so you can reach Dr. John Taylor at Therapist John Taylor. That's Therapist John Taylor. So if you can reach out to John Taylor, I'm not sure if he's taking any clients right now, but you could definitely reach out to him, communicate with him. He's doing some amazing things in the community, and he has his own podcast. So check his podcast out. And I'm looking to doing some further stuff with Dr. John Taylor myself. But what I do want to do is just tell everybody thank you for joining us tonight. And just our thoughts with the fellas when we had Dr. John Taylor on, having a conversation about domestic violence, and not just only men, but just in general, male, female, or whatever you identify yourself with. So if you can go back and listen in totality on YouTube, you can go to our YouTube page. You could go to our Just Our Thoughts Facebook page, and there's also other content that we have. Specifically during this time, we had Dr. Kia Everett on a few weeks ago, having a conversation with us during this time when it comes to loss and grieving. So if you can just, go back and, check some of our content out and see if it can do some type of help and some type of support. We want to wish everybody a happy holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone, all of our friends, all of our family that's watching, those that check us out on streaming services. We want you to enjoy this season, going into the new year.
Happy
The one thing
Kwanzaa.
that Happy Kwanzaa for
Happy
sure.
Hanukkah.
Happy
Yeah, I was
Hanukkah.
about to say
Thanks,
happy Hanukkah.
thanks for it.
Gotta hit it
Yeah.
all, brother.
No, I appreciate that,
Hold
and
on, yeah.
that's what we all here for. And if you can, the one thing that stands out to me during this season, if you can, there's one scripture for me that I love, and it's only half of the scripture. It says, God gave us so that he loved, that he loved. He gave us his son that he loved. And for me, the one thing that stands out is love, and how love equates giving. So if you can during this season,
You trying 3:16?
yeah, John 3:16. Ward.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ward. Check you out.
for God
Yeah,
so
check
loved
that
the
out,
world
Ward.
that he only gave his begotten
The
son.
only
Yeah.
begotten son. There you go,
Whosoever
Ward.
Mhm.
shall
Check
believe
you
in
out,
him
my
shall
brother.
not perish,
I think that's
but
the
have
only one I know.
everlasting life.
Oh man, so if you can, that love equates, that God has equates giving. So during this time, just give. If you don't have anything else to do, whether it's giving of your time, whether it's giving of your love, giving of your heart, if you can during this time, just give to whatever, whether it's to homeless shelters, whether it's to people, friends, and reaching out. So going into the next year, we are looking for newer and better things. We appreciate everybody. Thank you. God bless and good night. This is Keith, your host of Just a Thought with the Fellas.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace. See, now if I knew he was going to